Hey everyone, welcome back to another deep dive. And today we're tackling a topic that might sound kind of familiar at first glance.
Oh, yeah.
Life's Essential 8. But before you think, oh, I've heard this all before, trust me, this one goes way beyond those basic health tips. We're
Yeah.
going deep into the connection between these 8 habits and keeping your brain young and sharp.
It's true. We're not just talking about physical health here. This is about cognitive vitality, thinking sharper, remembering more, and basically having a brain that's ready for anything life throws at it.
So it's like a brain power upgrade.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm already intrigued. Now I gotta ask, where did this Life's Essential idea even come from?
Well, it's actually rooted in some seriously solid research. It's backed by the American Heart Association. They've got tons of resources and studies on this.
Ah, the AHA.
Mm-hmm.
So it started with heart health, but we're saying it goes way beyond that.
Right. You see, what's good for the heart is often good for the brain, too. They're interconnected in ways we're still uncovering.
That makes sense. The brain needs a steady supply of oxygen and nutrients, right? Exactly. And a healthy heart is key to pumping all that good stuff up to the brain.
Okay, so spill the beans. What are these 8 magic habits that can supposedly turn back the clock on our brains?
All right, let's dive in. The first one is eat better. Now, before you picture bland salads and flavorless tofu, hold on.
Haha. Right? Because that's not exactly a recipe for a happy brain.
Nope. We're talking about delicious, vibrant food. Think colorful veggies and fruits bursting with antioxidants. They're like little superheroes fighting off those pesky free radicals that can damage brain cells.
Antioxidants, those are the good guys, right?
Absolutely. They help protect your brain from damage caused by pollution, stress, all those things that can wear down your brain over time.
So we're talking berries, leafy greens, all those bright, beautiful foods.
Exactly. And don't forget about whole grains and legumes. They're full of fiber and complex carbs, which give your brain that slow-burning energy it needs to stay focused.
It's like fueling up for a marathon, but for your brain.
Exactly. And of course, we can't forget about lean proteins, fish, chicken, beans, lentils. They provide the building blocks for neurotransmitters, those essential chemical messengers in the brain.
Neurotransmitters, those are the ones that help our brain cells talk to each other, right?
You got it. They're involved in everything from memory to mood to focus.
So we're painting our plates with all the colors of the rainbow, fruits, veggies, lean proteins. Got it. But what about the stuff we should be limiting? What's on the brain's naughty list, so to speak?
Let's talk about sugar, especially added sugars lurking in processed foods and sugary drinks. You see, too much sugar can actually lead to inflammation in the brain.
Inflammation, isn't that like when your body's fighting off an injury or something?
It is. And while inflammation is a natural process, chronic inflammation, especially in the brain, is not good. It's like having a constant low-grade fire burning in there, and that can damage brain cells over time.
So ditching the sugar rush and opting for foods that keep our blood sugar levels steady is key.
Exactly. And let's not forget about those processed meats like bacon, sausage, and deli meats. The science is still emerging, but some studies suggest they might be linked to an increased risk of cognitive decline and even dementia.
Processed meats, those are the ones that have been cured, smoked, or have added preservatives, right?
That's right. We're not saying never enjoy them, but moderation is key.
Got it. Balance is key. So we've got eat better down. It's all about nourishing our brains with those vibrant, wholesome foods and being mindful of those things we might want to limit. Now let's move on to getting those bodies moving. I'm sensing a be physically active theme coming up here.
You read my mind, and this isn't about becoming a marathon runner or spending hours at the gym. It's about finding ways to move your body that you genuinely enjoy.
Like taking a dance class, going for a hike, or even just walking the dog.
Absolutely. Even those everyday activities can make a difference. The American Heart Association recommends at least 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week.
Okay, so we're talking about 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. That's totally doable.
Exactly. And the benefits for your brain are incredible. Exercise increases blood flow to the brain, which means more oxygen and nutrients for those brain cells. Plus, it stimulates the growth of new brain cells, especially in the hippocampus, the area responsible for learning and memory.
Wait, hold on. Are we actually growing new brain cells just by moving our bodies? That's amazing.
It really is. It's like hitting the refresh button on your brain, boosting its ability to learn and adapt. And of course, we can't forget about the mood-boosting power of exercise. Those endorphins are like natural antidepressants.
So we're talking a happier, healthier brain, both cognitively and emotionally. I'm officially on board with this one. Now, on to the next habit. And I'm guessing this one doesn't need much convincing. Quit tobacco.
You got it. And I know this can be a tough one for some folks, but the impact of smoking on brain health is just Undeniable. Think of it as a slow-burning fuse gradually eroding those delicate structures in your brain.
It's pretty well known that smoking damages blood vessels throughout the body. But can you explain how that specifically affects the brain?
Absolutely. Nicotine, that addictive substance in tobacco, constricts blood vessels, which reduces blood flow to the brain. This means your brain cells aren't getting the oxygen and nutrients they need to function properly.
So it's like slowly starving the brain of its essential fuel.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And over time, this can lead to cell death and atrophy, especially in areas involved in memory and decision-making.
Wow, that's scary. And it's not just about the smoker themselves, right? Secondhand smoke, especially for children, can be incredibly damaging.
You're absolutely right. Children's brains are still developing, so they're especially vulnerable to the harmful effects of tobacco smoke. Exposure to secondhand smoke has been linked to cognitive impairments, learning difficulties, and even behavioral problems.
It's a stark reminder that quitting tobacco is a gift not only to yourself, but to those around you, especially children. Now let's move on to a topic that can be a bit sensitive, but so important for overall health and brain function. Manage weight. I know this is a complex issue with many factors at play, but can we talk about how carrying excess weight can specifically impact brain health?
Of course, obesity is linked to several factors that can negatively affect brain function. For one, it can lead to insulin resistance, which means your body's cells aren't responding to insulin as well as they should, leading to elevated blood sugar levels. And as we'll discuss later, high blood sugar can damage those precious blood vessels in the brain.
It's like a domino effect, with excess weight setting off a chain reaction that ultimately hits the brain.
Exactly. And let's not forget about inflammation, which we talked about earlier. Obesity often goes hand in hand with chronic inflammation throughout the body, including the brain. This inflammation can damage brain cells, making it harder for them to communicate effectively.
So it's not just about fitting into our clothes, it's about protecting our brains from the damaging effects of excess weight and inflammation. Now let's talk about something that might sound a bit technical, but is actually pretty straightforward. Control cholesterol. Can you remind us about the different types of cholesterol and how they impact our brain health?
Sure. Think of cholesterol as a fat-like substance that travels through your bloodstream. There's HDL cholesterol, often called the good cholesterol because it acts like a scavenger, picking up excess LDL cholesterol, the bad kind, and transporting it to the liver for removal.
So it's like a cleanup crew for our arteries.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, when you have high levels of LDL cholesterol, it can build up in your arteries, forming plaque that restricts blood flow. And as you can imagine, that restricted blood flow can deprive the brain of the oxygen and nutrients it needs to function at its best.
It's like clogging the fuel lines to our brain. So keeping those cholesterol levels in check is crucial for maintaining healthy blood flow to the brain. Now, what about managed blood sugar? How does that tie into brain health?
Though when we eat carbohydrates, our bodies break them down into glucose, which enters our bloodstream. Insulin, a hormone produced by the pancreas, helps our cells absorb glucose from the blood, using it for energy or storing it for later. But sometimes this process can go awry, leading to imbalanced blood sugar levels.
So it's all about how our bodies process the sugar from the food we eat.
Right. And when blood sugar levels are chronically elevated, as seen in uncontrolled diabetes, it can have detrimental effects on the brain. Think of it this way. High blood sugar can damage the delicate blood vessels in the brain, leading to tiny bleeds known as microstrokes.
Microstrokes, that sounds scary.
Yes, and they can impair cognitive function, memory, and even increase the risk of dementia over time. So managing blood sugar is not only crucial for overall health, but it's a vital step in protecting our brains. Now, let's talk about another silent threat to brain health. Manage blood pressure.
Blood pressure, we all know we should keep it in check, but why is it so important for our brains specifically?
High blood pressure, or hypertension, is like a constant stressor on the delicate blood vessels in the brain. Over time, this can weaken and damage those vessels, increasing the risk of bleeds, both tiny ones called microstrokes and larger, more debilitating strokes.
Well, it's about protecting those precious blood vessels in the brain from the wear and tear of high blood pressure.
Exactly. And it's not just about preventing those dramatic stroke events. High blood pressure can also contribute to the buildup of amyloid plaques and tau tangles, the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. So managing blood pressure is crucial for safeguarding our brains and reducing the risk of cognitive decline down the road. Now, last but certainly not least, we have a habit that I think we can all get behind. Get healthy sleep.
Sleep. The ultimate reset button. We all know how good a night's rest feels, but can you explain the specific ways it benefits our brains?
Sleep is truly essential for brain health. Think of it as a nightly spa treatment for your mind, allowing it to recharge, detoxify, and consolidate memories. During sleep, our brains are busy clearing out metabolic waste products that have accumulated throughout the day, preventing them from building up and damaging brain cells.
So even when we're asleep, our brains are hard at work cleaning house. That's impressive.
It is, and that's not all. Sleep plays a crucial role in memory consolidation. While we sleep, our brains replay memories from the day, strengthening the connections between neurons and solidifying those memories into long-term storage.
It's like transferring those important files from a temporary folder to the hard drive, ensuring those memories are safely tucked away for future retrieval.
Exactly. And on the flip side, when we don't get enough sleep, it can impair our ability to learn, remember, and make sound decisions. Sleep deprivation can lead to cognitive sluggishness, impaired attention, and an increased risk of making mistakes.
It's like trying to run our brains on empty eventually. We're gonna hit a wall.
Precisely. And let's not forget about the impact of sleep on emotional well-being. Sleep is essential for emotional regulation and mental resilience. While we sleep, our brains process emotional experiences from the day, helping us regulate our mood, reduce stress, and cope with challenges more effectively.
So it's not just about feeling rested, it's about equipping our brains to handle the ups and downs of life with more grace and resilience. This has been such an insightful overview of life's essential eight and their profound connection to brain health. It's amazing to think that we have so much control over how our brains age and function.
It is empowering, isn't it? These habits demonstrate that we can actively shape the trajectory of our brain health and cognitive vitality.
Okay, I'm ready to dive deeper into the specifics of how these habits work their magic on our brains. Are you ready to explore the science behind these brain-boosting strategies?
Absolutely.
Like,
Let's unpack the science and uncover even more insights about how we can optimize our brain health through these 8 essential habits. Okay? So let's dig a little deeper into the science behind these brain-boosting habits. We're talking about eat better and all those colorful fruits and veggies. Remember how we said they're packed with antioxidants?
right, like those blueberries and spinach.
Exactly. They're not just pretty to look at. They're like tiny warriors defending your brain cells from damage. We mentioned free radicals earlier.
Yeah, those unstable molecules that can damage cells.
Right. Think of them like rust on a car. They're a natural byproduct of metabolism. But things like pollution, stress, and processed foods can make them multiply.
So too many free radicals running around can really mess with our brains.
Yep. And that's where those antioxidants swoop in. They neutralize those free radicals, protecting our brain cells from damage.
Yeah.
It's like they're giving our brains a shield against all that wear and tear.
So those vibrant fruits and veggies are essential for keeping our brains healthy.
Absolutely. Now remember those lean proteins we talked about: fish, chicken, beans, lentils? They're crucial for brain function too. You see, proteins are broken down into amino acids. And some of those amino acids are the precursors to neurotransmitters.
Okay, remind me again, neurotransmitters, those are the chemical messengers in the brain, right?
You got it. They're the communication system of the brain, involved in everything from mood to memory to learning.
So without enough of those essential amino acids, our brain's communication network would be down.
Exactly. Those messages wouldn't be getting through. And that could lead to all sorts of problems: trouble concentrating, feeling sluggish, even feeling down.
I see the connection now. What we eat directly impacts our brain's ability to function. Now, what about the stuff we should be limiting: sugar and processed meats? Can you break down how they affect the brain?
Sure. Let's start with sugar. When we eat too much sugar, especially those refined sugars in processed foods and sugary drinks, our blood sugar levels spike. That triggers a surge of insulin, which helps our cells absorb that glucose from the blood. But over time, those constant spikes and crashes in blood sugar can lead to insulin resistance.
Insulin resistance, meaning our cells become less responsive to insulin.
Exactly. It's like our cells are getting bombarded with sugar and becoming desensitized to it. And this insulin resistance can affect the whole body, including the brain. Studies have linked insulin resistance to an increased risk of cognitive decline and Alzheimer's disease.
So it's not just about our waistlines. Keeping those blood sugar levels stable is crucial for our brains too.
Absolutely. Now, onto those processed meats. Research suggests a connection between high consumption of processed meats like bacon, sausage, and deli meats and an increased risk of cognitive decline and dementia.
Interesting. I've heard that red meat in general isn't great for our hearts. Is there a reason why processed meats are particularly bad for the brain?
Well, the thinking is that certain compounds formed during the processing of these meats might be the culprits. Things like nitrates and nitrites might be contributing to inflammation and oxidative stress in the brain.
So it's like those processed meats are adding fuel to the fire of inflammation, potentially speeding up brain aging.
That's the idea. So again, moderation is key.
Got it. Balance in all things. Now I'm really interested in learning more about be physically active. You mentioned that exercise can actually stimulate the growth of new brain cells. How does that even work?
Well, when we exercise, our brains release a protein called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF for short.
BDNF, that sounds important.
Think of BDNF like fertilizer for the brain. It promotes the growth and survival of neurons, especially in the hippocampus, that area of the brain responsible for learning and memory.
So exercise is basically telling our brains to build new brain cells.
Exactly. And it's not just about growing new cells. Exercise also increases blood flow to the brain. That means more oxygen and nutrients for those hungry brain cells. It also helps reduce inflammation and oxidative stress.
So exercise is like a triple threat. It stimulates growth, delivers nourishment, and protects against damage. No wonder it's often called the best medicine.
And we can't forget about the mental and emotional benefits. Studies show that regular exercise can improve memory, attention, and executive function, those higher-level thinking skills. And of course, there's the mood boost from those endorphins.
Right. So we're talking sharper thinking, better memory, and a brighter mood, all thanks to getting our bodies moving.
Exactly. And it's not just about intense workouts. Even moderate exercise like brisk walking can make a huge difference. The key is to find something you enjoy and make it a regular part of your life.
Makes sense. Okay, let's talk about quit tobacco. We know it's bad for us, but can you break down the specific ways it damages the brain?
Well, smoking is like a double whammy for the brain. It reduces blood flow, which means less oxygen and nutrients for those brain cells, and it increases inflammation and oxidative stress, basically speeding up the aging process and increasing the risk of all sorts of brain diseases.
It's like a 1-2 punch, weakening the brain's defenses and making it more vulnerable to damage.
Exactly. And we can't forget about the increased risk of stroke. Smoking damages blood vessels, making them more prone to plaque buildup, and it thickens the blood, increasing the likelihood of clots. This can lead to blockages in the blood vessels that supply the brain, causing a stroke.
That's a pretty powerful reminder that quitting smoking is one of the best things we can do for our brains and our overall health. All right, let's move on to manage weight. We talked about the link between obesity and insulin resistance, but I'd love to understand how insulin resistance specifically affects the brain.
Well, insulin resistance messes with the brain's ability to use glucose for energy, which can lead to cognitive fatigue and make it harder to think clearly. It also increases inflammation in the brain, which can damage brain cells and impair their function. And there's even a link between insulin resistance and an increased risk of Alzheimer's disease.
So it's not just about the physical strain of carrying extra weight, it's about the changes happening at a cellular level that directly affect brain function.
Exactly. Some researchers believe that insulin resistance might even contribute to the formation of those amyloid plaques, those sticky protein deposits that are a hallmark of Alzheimer's.
Wow, so managing weight isn't just about looking good, it's about protecting our brains from serious damage.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to control cholesterol. We talked about how high cholesterol can clog those arteries and restrict blood flow, but how does that specifically impact the brain?
Yeah, I'm curious about that too.
Well, the brain is a real energy hog. It needs a constant supply of oxygen and nutrients, and even a slight reduction in blood flow can have a negative impact. When cholesterol builds up in the arteries, it narrows the passageways, making it harder for blood to get through.
So it's like a traffic jam in our arteries, slowing down the delivery of essential supplies to the brain.
Exactly. And this restricted blood flow can lead to all sorts of problems, from mild cognitive impairment to more serious conditions like stroke and vascular dementia.
It really highlights the importance of keeping those arteries clear and ensuring those brain cells are well nourished. Okay, what about managed blood sugar? How does high blood sugar harm the brain?
High blood sugar, or hyperglycemia, is another one that can damage the brain in multiple ways. First, it can weaken the blood-brain barrier. That's the protective shield that keeps harmful substances from entering the brain.
So it's like compromising the brain's security system.
Exactly. High blood sugar can also increase inflammation in the brain, which, as we know, can damage brain cells. And it can even contribute to the formation of those amyloid plaques we talked about earlier.
It's a triple whammy, weakening defenses, increasing inflammation, and potentially contributing to Alzheimer's. Managing blood sugar is clearly crucial for protecting our brains. Now let's talk about managed blood pressure. You mentioned that high blood pressure can weaken and damage blood vessels in the brain, but I'm wondering how that affects cognitive function.
High blood pressure can lead to several problems that can impair how our brains work. For one, it can damage the lining of blood vessels, making them more susceptible to plaque buildup, which restricts blood flow to the brain, depriving those brain cells of oxygen and nutrients.
So those blood vessels become less efficient at delivering those essential supplies.
Exactly. High blood pressure can also increase the risk of tiny bleeds in the brain, known as microbleeds. They might be small, but they can still damage surrounding brain tissue and increase the risk of dementia.
It sounds like high blood pressure is setting off a chain reaction that can lead to cognitive decline.
That's right. Managing blood pressure is essential for protecting those delicate blood vessels in the brain and ensuring a healthy blood flow. Now let's move on to our final habit, and this is one we can all appreciate. Get healthy sleep. You said sleep is like a spa treatment for the brain, but how exactly does it benefit our brain health? Well, while we sleep, our brains are busy doing some heavy lifting. One of the key things that happens during sleep is the clearance of metabolic waste products that have built up in the brain throughout the day.
So it's like our brains are taking out the trash while we sleep.
Exactly. And that's essential for maintaining brain health. If that waste builds up, it can damage brain cells and impair cognitive function.
It's incredible to think that our brains are so active even when we're asleep, working hard to keep things clean and running smoothly.
It is. And that's not all. Sleep is also crucial for memory consolidation. While we're sleeping, our brains are busy replaying memories from the day, strengthening the connections between neurons, and moving those memories from short-term to long-term storage.
So our brains are basically reviewing the day's lesson plan, making sure we remember the important stuff.
You got it. And if we don't get enough sleep, it can be much harder to learn new things, remember information, and even make good decisions.
It's like trying to run our brains on fumes. We're bound to crash eventually.
Exactly. And let's not forget the restorative power of sleep. During sleep, our bodies release hormones that help repair tissues, boost our immune system, and regulate our metabolism.
So sleep is about way more than just feeling rested. It's giving our brains and bodies the time they need to recharge and function at their best.
Absolutely. Getting enough sleep is one of those fundamental things we can do for our overall health and well-being. And it's essential for maintaining a sharp and resilient brain throughout our lives. We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, exploring the science behind these 8 essential habits and their impact on brain health. What's resonating with you so far?
Honestly, what's really striking me is how interconnected these habits are. It's not about picking one or two and ignoring the rest. They all work together to support both our physical and cognitive health. Yeah, it's like we're creating this foundation for a healthy brain, and each habit is a building block.
That's a great way to think about it. It really emphasizes how important it is to think about brain health holistically. It's not about finding some quick fix or magic pill. It's about making these consistent choices that support our brains over the long term.
You know what's really encouraging about all of this? It kind of challenges that whole idea that aging has to mean decline. It seems like we actually have more influence over how our brains age than we might think.
I agree. Our brains are remarkably adaptable even as we age. This whole concept of neuroplasticity is changing how we understand aging. It means that our brains can continue to grow, change, and form new connections throughout our lives.
So even as we get older, our brains can still learn and adapt.
Exactly. Every time we learn something new or challenge ourselves mentally, we're strengthening those neural pathways and building what's called cognitive reserve.
Cognitive reserve, what is that exactly?
Think of cognitive reserve as kind of a buffer against cognitive decline. It's like having a savings account for your brain. The more cognitive reserve you have, the better equipped your brain is to handle those natural changes that come with aging.
So it's like building up resilience in the brain, helping it withstand those challenges.
Exactly. And these 8 habits we've been talking about, they're like deposits into that cognitive reserve account.
I love that analogy. It makes it so clear. Now, I know some folks listening might be feeling a little overwhelmed. Like, okay, 8 habits? That's a lot. Where do I even begin? What advice would you give to someone who's feeling a bit intimidated by all of this?
The most important thing is to start small. Focus on progress, not perfection. Pick 1 or 2 habits that really resonate with you, something you feel like you can realistically stick with.
Don't try to do everything at once.
Right. It's a marathon, not a sprint. And don't be afraid to reach out for support. Talk to your doctor. Find a friend or family member who wants to join you on this journey. Or look for a group or community that focuses on healthy living.
Having that support system can make a world of difference.
It really can. And don't forget to celebrate those wins along the way. Every healthy choice you make is a step in the right direction. It's all about those small, consistent steps that add up over time.
And remember, it's never too late to start. Our brains are incredibly resilient. Even small changes can have a big impact. This deep dive has been so eye-opening. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of brain health and how much power we have to shape our cognitive future.
Me too. It's been a pleasure exploring this topic with you. I hope our listeners are feeling inspired to take charge of their brain health and embrace these 8 habits as part of their journey to cognitive vitality.
That's a great way to put it. So on that note, we'll wrap up this episode of The Deep Dive. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Remember, every healthy choice you make is an investment in a brighter future for your brain. Until next time, keep those synapses firing.